to talk all about your Missouri basketball Tigers as the only podcast strictly talking about Mizzou basketball. I'm your host, Sam Snelling. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see me on your left. Please take a moment to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, so we can help this channel grow a bit. And with me to the right for the first time in what seems like ages, Mr. Matthew J. Harris. Matt, how are you?
I'm well. Um, Glad that we have something to talk about in the middle of July. So thank you to the recruiting trail for giving us some fodder as we wrap up this season and turn the page to another one. And otherwise, I'm just going through and doing spreadsheet updates for recruiting targets this week. So it's that time of year when the grassroots season winds down, and fortunately, it's given us material to talk about tonight.
So the big news, and I think what everybody's wanting us to probably talk about to lead this thing off, is the most recent commitment, something that doesn't happen very often to the to Mizzou basketball, and signing or at least getting a commitment from an out-of-state five-star player. Um, Missouri got one in the form of shooting guard or combo guard, more combo guard, I guess, lead guard, scoring guard. Jason Crow Jr., who is currently a top 10 player, depending on the service, uh, right around fifth or sixth, I think by
Yeah,
most people. I think he's sixth in the composite, or maybe fifth in the
yeah,
composite, sixth in 247, if I have that right. Either way, very well thought of as a prospect. Something that, like, the interesting side of this is, like, this really came out of nowhere in a lot of ways because going back a couple years, like, you know you're kind of seeing what the board is looking like. It's looking like wing wing big big wing wing big big. Not a lot of lead guards, and sure enough, the first guy that they get in the class is not just a lead guard, but one of the best lead guards you can get.
yeah. I think based on the reporting and everything that we sort of heard coming out of this thing really materialized in late June, probably around the time that Jason Crow Jr. Was out at the USA basketball camp, probably going through tryouts. I think for the U19 trials or the U17 trials. I think probably the U19 trials. Um, and that's one where coaches kind of drop in and they kind of watch and they kind of like keep an eye on that. And it's really one of those deals like you only go to the USA basketball trials if you're recruiting somebody at the USA basketball trials. It's not like a grassroots circuit where everyone just kind of descends and watches guys. But to hear that it kind of started there and the genesis of the recruitment started there, and you know a little bit of a relationship or back history between Jason Crow Sr., who coaches his son at Inglewood Cal High School, and Dennis Gates. Jason Crow Sr. went to the LA Clippers, I think, training camp way back in the day when Dennis was sort of getting his start. They kind of had a connection there. So it seeing kind of the roots of this and seeing how quickly it moved, I think, is what caught us off guard. I think anybody who had sort of followed Crow's recruitment, I think I wrote this in both pieces, one for the plus and one for the main site, thought it was kind of a fait accompli that he was going to go to Kentucky. Jason Hart is on their staff. He and Jason Crow Sr. are like longtime friends, played high school basketball together. They know each other in various different ways. Jason Crow Jr. has described Hart as like a godfather or an uncle to him. And so the fact that this thing flipped so quickly and that Missouri moved in so aggressively here, it'll be interesting to sort of see and learn more about kind of how the recruitment played out so quickly. But regardless, it was fast, it was furious, and for Missouri to get this done is impressive. Particularly to go from zero to a commitment in what sounds like less than a month is obviously fast. Um, so I think we're all still even trying to get kind of caught up on what kind of prospect Crow is at this point. But the optics of this are undeniable. Top five kid, arguably the top scorer in this class. Commits live on national television to you at the biggest sort of grassroots basketball festival in the country. It's a win-win if you're worried about engagement and if you care about impressions. We'll talk about the basketball stuff here, but I think more than anything else, off the top, I'm just struck by from an optics perspective, this certainly helps, and it certainly, I think, is a nice bounce back from what we thought had been a rough start to the class. Seeing J.J. Andrews really emerge as a top 20 prospect, but stay in state at Arkansas, to see Sheik Pearson, a guy that you were really early on, pick Marquette, to kind of bounce back and get Crow is undeniably, just from a vibes and optics perspective, really, really good. So I think the fan base could use it, and the program certainly embraced the good vibes that were coming out late last week.
Well, and it really almost like eclipsed the Atkinson news, which like we were all super thrilled about.
I'm
Like
still
one of
super
the
thrilled about that.
yeah, and something that we're going to be able to be thrilled about for a long time to come because he's still got a ways to go before he even hits campus. But it is unusual to kind of get that first 27 recruit before you land your 26. Um, but it did kind of seem like for everything that they were, trying to accomplish in this class, it's almost like some of the things have shifted a bit when you're adding a guy like Crow. And so I was on um, Brendan Weesey's show on 550 KTRS, and he was kind of asking me about, the roster layout. And one thing that I started kind of thinking about, and I wonder if this is something you might agree with, or just from an analytical standpoint, or maybe I'm overthinking it, but nobody knows the roster better than the Missouri coaches.
Yeah.
And like I said before, for as long as we've been kind of keeping track of this class, it didn't appear that they were really looking for a lead guard. Cup to spring and summer workouts, and I'm wondering, is Anthony Robinson doing things that make the coaching staff think that maybe they need a guard in this class more so than maybe they thought prior?
I mean, they had been pursuing Dylan Mingo in this class for a while, and Mingo had always said nice things about them. But you never saw like a list cut down. You never saw Mingo even like fully commit to the idea of visiting Missouri in an official capacity. And when you've been going after a guy for a year and you're still kind of waiting to see where that is, I think if that was the point guard that they were selling out to get and they hadn't gotten there, and this opportunity came up to get Crow, I think you pounce on it. I think when I look at the board, and when I say board, when I look at the roster here for 2026 for next season, we're still looking at Anthony Robinson II coming back. He could be a senior in 2026, 27. We're still looking at Sebastian Mack will be a senior if he's around. Tio Barrett will be a junior, and Aaron Rowe will be a sophomore. Even if Ant is back, you can still play him and Crow together and still have some depth there. You can pair Crow and Mack up, and you get kind of a physical on-ball defender, both ways. But if you really want to double up your true ball handlers, you can play Crow and Robinson together. Rowe and Crow together, that'll be fun alliteration. Are both guys that I think can play in transition, can play at a high speed, so you can go small and fast. Regardless of whether or not Anthony Robinson is here or how he's looking, this is an addition you want to make. And I think more so than anything else, the way I look at it is, who's been the guy in the last 3 or 4 years since the staff has been here where you can legitimately say this guy can go create offense independent of what a set is trying to achieve. We thought maybe Isaiah Mosley when he first got here, but if you were to look up and down the roster over the past couple of years, maybe to an extent Sean East could, but that was kind of a more meandering type of style, and it was a little bit different than how Crow plays. But Crow's arguably the best shot creator in the class. You can spread the floor, 5 out, set a high ball screen, and let him go. It's the simplest form of offense possible. You can come to him late in the clock, set a ball screen, let him go. Missouri has probably not had as pure of a shot creator, as natural kind of a space maker off the bounce as him. So no matter what the positional grouping looks like, to have a guy who can go create offense independent of a set and do it naturally is a massive advantage to have, and I think you want to have that. I think you can. So it's a good problem to figure out how you're going to pair them up. Um, but at this point, I just think it's about getting talent and then figuring out what the roster is going to look like later, and seeing how that's going to work. I think right now it would probably be a bit too premature to project, that Ant Robinson is going to be, a first round pick next year. I think if Jason Crow wants to come play basketball for you, you take it, you say yes, and then you sort of figure out what to do from there. And that's a good problem to have. It's a problem that I think a lot of staffs would love to have at this point.
Yeah, their skill sets are kind of complementary, even though they both sort of look like you might have them as like your primary guard. But they are complementary. Crow, at least so far, hasn't really shown a penchant for wanting to play a lot of defense, and it's entirely uh, or I guess it's also widely known that Anthony Robinson is quite good at the defense. So,
Yeah.
you can sort of play around with that. I still look at it like it is still surprising to me that the primary guard sort of spot was and maybe it's just sort of a situation where like the addition of Tim Fuller, for example, he kind of comes in and says, "Hey, look, like I'm hearing that the Crow family are not super thrilled with exactly where they sit in a lot of their recruiting situations. Whether it's Kentucky, USC, Texas, and I think there's room for us to kind of get in and,
Yeah.
and sort of make an early impression if you want to hop on that and you're like, well, shoot, that's like a top 5 kid, like, yeah, let's go talk to him.
Yeah.
And then it works out. So it's entirely possible that that's the case. I was just sort of musing that it is interesting to sort of see this kind of pivot when we just really haven't seen them pursue those type of guys in this
I
class,
mean,
at least.
I think for my seat, you make the move aggressively because when you look at the portal and you look at what are the most expensive kind of assets to get out of the portal, it's proven on ball scorers and it's proven bigs. And so if you can, I don't care if you get it out of the portal. I don't care if you get it, with a guy looking to reset after a bad freshman year. If you can get a guy who is as adept at shot creation as Jason Crow, you do it. And you try and get that guy in the mixer. And there's enough time now for the staff to start figuring out, okay, how do we transition him to maybe situations where he's got to play off the ball? Oh, well, we're going to build a roster that's going to have some more size and positional length around him so we can kind of cover up for some of the defensive issues. Oh, we might have to shift our offense away from a little bit or de-emphasize a little bit some of the Princeton and triangle stuff and go back to pistol or high or 5-out stuff. Well, they've got time. I think the way I sort of look at it is now if you can get a guy with talent accumulation and get that guy for a year, you do it, and then you just sort of have enough lead time now to figure out how you want to shape the roster afterwards. And if Ant goes to the draft, you're covered. If he comes back, you develop Sebastian Mack appropriately, you've got 3 ball handlers who are really, really good and all who can create different kinds of pressure off the bounce. Crow is kind of more of a guy I would say is a mid-range hunter. Ant can play off one dribble pull-ups and but he can also get into the paint. Mac just wants to attack the rim. You're starting to get different kinds of ball handlers and different kinds of creation on the ball together. And I think that's just the biggest thing you want. And if you can add some functional strength to a guy like Aaron Rowe, now you've got a guy who's built to play in transition. I think the biggest thing is you've now got a premium shot creator. And whether that's a point guard, whether it's a combo guard, whether it's a wing, that's a massive commodity to have on your roster. And so he just happens to be a scoring point guard. But if he was a combo guard or a wing, you take him and you just try and you go, yay, we have 18 months to figure out how to make this really good shot creator work for us. So it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's definitely a good problem to have. The how the lineups are going to play out is nothing that I would be worried about right now.
No.
With the way rosters work, like because we can sit here, we can be like, oh, we've also got to talk about Aaron Rowe, we've also got to talk about T.O. Barrett. Let's let these guys play this season of basketball and like see how they do. Because it's entirely possible that uh, sort of, check in, mid-season, and there are guys who are not playing a lot, and maybe looking at exiting the roster at the end of the year. Like, you just don't know at this day and age exactly like what's going to carry over. Like, you want guys back, and you want to be able to develop them over multiple years. But the reality is like, there's only so many minutes to go around.
Yeah, the way I sort of, and I think we've said this privately, is this year is about developing a stable enough core so that when Jason Crow gets here, and this will sound a little bit counterintuitive, that he doesn't have to be the focal point, which will sound weird for a top five guy. But when you look at, you know, these types of guys, these types of combo guards, scoring guards over the last 5 years, some of them have gone to mediocre rosters, and those rosters have stayed mediocre. Sometimes they've gone to really, really good rosters, and those teams have been good. It really comes down to, with some of these guys, if you only have one or two of these guys, that's not enough of a critical mass to elevate your entire roster, usually. Um, if you've What matters is your core that's around them. So this year is incredibly important. If Anthony Robinson plays so well that they can go get an NBA paycheck, that's awesome. We'll be thrilled for him. But if he's still just really good but not quite short of being draftable, well, now you've got a senior point guard who's a really, really good on-ball defender that you can put with your really, really good on-ball creator, and they complement each other. If Sebastian Mack's jumper improves enough, now you've got a guy who can really play off the catch a little bit and start attacking as a secondary guy, can run some second side ball screens for you. Point being, this year is incredibly important for Missouri to continue to develop a nucleus that can sustain it for 2026, 27, and 2027 and 28. And that's not to discount the importance and know the results this year. People want to see Missouri do well this year. But if you're talking about Jason Crow specifically, you want to have as stable a core and as reliable a core as possible for when he gets here. So, he can be a guy that can come in and you can optimize his ability instead of saying, well, you're a freshman, go do everything for us.
Yeah.
The results when he's going to get drafted off of his potential and his shot creation regardless. These guys go pro no matter what it is. So it's about, can you build a core around him good enough to maximize the likely 1 year that you have him. That's the big concern right now, or the big thing that you watch in the near term until he gets here.
So they've got one guy on board. The rest of the class is still yet to be determined. We know another five-star guy, Tony Bryant, is visiting. We know Aiden Chronister, one of our sort of favorite longer-term wing shooter types. They've got I almost said Terrace Reed, Tristan Reed, coming in for a visit as well. And then who's the last guy that I'm?
Ethan Taylor.
Ethan Taylor, that's it. So Ethan Taylor, also very high up on the list. Got some pretty stiff competition. I mean, there's stiff competition for a lot of these guys because they're all, top level kids.
Top 80, all of them.
Yeah, and especially with Taylor, the Jayhawks have been coming on pretty strong late. He is a Kansas kid. But Missouri's been on him a long time. So it is one of those situations where there's still a ways to go in this class. One of the things, like Tony Bryant has sort of mentioned that he wants to wait a bit to commit.
Just a bit.
Yeah, so that does sort of make it interesting, because if you have I know you and I are, I think, on the same page. If Tristan Reed wants to commit, like, you're going to take that kid, right?
Take him.
He does a lot of the things that that not a lot of bigs want to do, which is some of the dirty work around the rim. I think I really like the stat that you posted in the forums today about him actually having more rebounds than field goal attempts during the EYBL. That's a good sign because there's certainly been some questions on Missouri's rebounding over the years under Dennis Gates. How are we kind of hoping that this plays out?
To me, I think Tony Bryant's says he's on a timeline to commit next spring. Maybe that gets backed up to winter. So either way, you're looking at into this year. That's still a protracted timeline. Ethan Taylor's looking to commit before the early period, and Tristan Reed's probably on the same timeline. So the question is, if you want to take a 5-man class, I mean, I'm probably Watkins and I are probably counter to a lot of folks today that would say, no, portal, international markets. No, go get young dudes, develop them, maximize that second year they get in your program. So if they wanted to take all 5, I would say take all 5. I don't think Missouri's going to do that. I think they've sort of shifted to saying 2 to 3. Would this year be a year where you take 3 to 4? Maybe. So that leaves you in a position where you might be deciding, which of the bigs is the odd man out.
Well, and also, like, if we're being completely fair here, having a kid like Crow, like a top 5 level talent, a bucket getter, is probably as good of any kind of portal addition you're going to get.
Yeah, that's the best way to view it.
Yeah, and so, like, and I think, like, that's maybe how, and maybe even, Bryant as well, if you're looking at guys that are at that level, and Taylor.
So you're taking 2 transfers, and you're taking 3 freshmen who would be guys that you would have long term. So that's how you get to your 5-man if you wanted to get there. If you want to take 5, again, if they could get all 5 top 80 guys, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh darn, how are they gonna, like, no, this is a fantastic problem to have if they get there. I'm saying, do you feel like you're going to have enough overlap, though, between where if Bryant views himself as a post, well, then he's in conflict with Taylor. And if Reed views himself as a 4 and Bryant views himself as a 4, is that gonna be prohibitive there? So it's just, I guess it comes down to not what Missouri's preferences are so much as how do these guys view the situation here and view the depth chart here. This is just me speaking for my preferences, not for the staff. It's not for anything I've heard, but this is just my view. I would take Tristan Reed. I wouldn't think twice about it. I think he's the kind of guy who becomes a fantastic college player. He does all the things that, like you mentioned, that big men seem less inclined to do. He rebounds the living crap out of the ball. He had a 25% defensive rebound rate and a 16% offensive rebound rate on the toughest grassroots circuit in the country. He did that in 16 to 18 minutes a game. The dude just hoovers up misses. He's got, he's only 6'8", 210, but he's got a +7 wingspan. And he's got a massive frame. He's incredibly well built. So yeah, is he undersized as a post? Yeah, but with his length and his strength, he can play good positional defense. He averages 2.2 stocks per game, that's steals and blocks per game, on a really, really good ratio of fouls to disruption. So yeah, he's not 7 foot and doesn't look like a center on the hoof, but he creates enough rim protection and rebounding with his length to cause problems for you. He's in the 85th percentile of rim finishing on the toughest circuit in the country. You dump it to the short corner, he's going to finish. You throw him a lob, he's going to finish. He has enough strength and ability to carve out room. So if you let him duck in and seal, he can play high-low, and he can finish over either shoulder. He does the kinds of things that a lot of people, I think, take for granted now. Rim run, rebound, short corner, duck-ins. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think, we love offensive scheme as much as anybody, but what's a great play sometimes? Come down, punch the ball into the post in the first 5 seconds and see if you can't exploit a mismatch. He can do that for you. So I just think that there's, you could try and see what skill sets are there, how he could evolve as a connector over the next couple of years, but he just does all the things that you look at on a nightly basis in a tough league like the SEC, and you go, you need guys who can play positional defense. You need guys who rebound. You need guys who can finish around the rim for you. You need guys who set good screens. And if we can develop him over the next couple of years to be a connector, or we can get him to where he can face up at the elbow or the mid post and shoot it a little bit, even better. But I think a lot of people will look at him and say, "Oh, well, I'm not sure what projectable traits he has." He does a lot of things that I think help you win basketball games, and I will take that in a rotation. It's the same thing I said about Nick Randall. Nick Randall showed an ability to face up. He showed an ability to connect. But what did Nick Randall do better than anything else? He rebounded. He had like a 13% offensive rebound rate and a 25% defensive rebound rate, and he can lean on dudes. You need guys at the end of the day who can play positional defense, who can rebound and can give you rim finishing. So if Tristan Reed wanted to come down, I would say, please come join us. Come help us. Come help supply just those very, very fundamental things to the rotation. And I wouldn't think twice. And then I'd say if we can get one or both of Ethan Taylor and Tony Bryant, even better. But at least I know I got a guy who for 4 years can give me fundamental things you need night in and night out in a high major league. That's my stump speech for Tristan.
And there's a lot to be said for the offensive rebounding. You know as well as anybody, like Florida basically like reformatted their team after 1 year under Golden by going and getting guys who could offensive rebound. That's how you can cover up a lot of mistakes offensively. I mean, Lord knows Texas A&M could not shoot the ball to save their lives, but somehow still managed like a top 30 offense because they rebounded like crazy.
Their offense was fetch. That's what their offense was.
Yeah. It's like, get something at the rim. We'll see if we can go get it. So having guys like that can kind of give you second chances. Like, Dennis is kind of known for having a lot of, tricks in the bag, sort of, pull out and run great offense. And sometimes that shot doesn't go in. Doesn't matter how good of offense you run. Sometimes the shot doesn't go in. Having somebody on the weak side who can snatch that ball and put it right back in will help you a lot. So I think you and I are on the same page with that. I think you need guys like Tristan Reed. I think you can. Those are like the foundational guys. Like, it's nice to, if you can add guys like Crow to sort of pop and give you like a little splash. Great. But you definitely need guys who aren't afraid to like elbow their way into the lane and collect boards.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll kind of leave the recruit unless there's any other sort of tidbits you want to hit on the recruiting before we kind of move on there.
No, I think everyone sort of knows the board at this point and sort of is looking at what it's going to look like. I think if they could lock in Chronister, who's another guy that I think long term is the right kind of college player. He's got to develop in some areas. Still got to get better as kind of a rim finisher and playing and get stronger playing off the bounce. Can still improve as a one-to-one defender, but there's the shot tool, and he's showing the ability to maybe make some secondary passing reads. That's a guy who at 6'7", with a +6 wingspan who can shoot it a little bit. That's a guy that you want to have in your rotation alongside a guy like Anand or Boateng. These are just guys that I think they can come in too and they have a skill they can latch onto. If Chronicers is he can space the floor for you and play good team defense, that's a way to get him on the floor and have some depth that's useful. Same thing with sort of Tristan Reed. He's a guy who can come in, defend for a little bit, rebound, and maybe rim finish for you. That's good quality depth that you're getting there where you're not needing to make them a focal point, but they can contribute and they can sort of give Dennis that quality depth that I think he aspires to have. So for me, like, I know there's going to be a lot of people looking at Bryant or Taylor, but to me, the kind of guys you get that build cores that contend are Tristan Reed and Aiden Chronister. They're guys that you can come in for multiple years, that they have skills that can translate relatively early, give them some minutes, give them some buy-in, and then you develop them, and then you're starting to supplement them with a guy like a Tony Bryant or a Jason Crow. So to me, like, I know people are going to be like, you don't sound really amped to talk about the 5-star guys. Get guys in here that can build cores, because that's what wins you championships. That's Jason Crow is great for vibes and great for optics, and he will definitely help when he gets here. But the long-term success of your roster is building stable cores, and I think Tristan Reed and Aiden Chronister are the kind of guys that can do that for him.
Well, yeah, and then if you drop a guy like Crow into a roster that has a stable core, now especially like guys that are in that range that sort of come like they sort of figure things out as the season goes along, and they can
Yeah,
really pop later in the year. And now you're talking about like the possibility of the kind of team that can make deeper runs into March,
yeah,
which is ultimately what I think we all want, right?
yeah.
More second weekend, more, and maybe for once a third weekend.
Still waiting on the third weekend. Still waiting on the third weekend.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. One of the things, like, so my this is probably a little oversharing. My dad's been in the hospital for the last few days. He's fine, but just kind of dealing with some things, and they want to kind of monitor and all that kind of stuff. But when you're going to keep him company to kind of keep him engaged and not bored out of his skull, like go in and we can talk hoops. And one of the things that I said, and this is even knowing that Crow was coming, is I really, and I believe this, like in a couple years you're getting a kid named Scotty Atkinson who's going to hit your roster, and he is probably going to be on your roster for at least 3 seasons. And I would not be shocked at all if that kid was part of Missouri's first Final Four run. I would love it if it happened before that. But man, I love that kid. He is a winner. He does everything that you want. And so I'm not to pump everybody up. Certainly, I'm not trying to get my dad too excited when he's
Yeah.
he's hooked up to things in the hospital. But that's definitely like when Atkinson hits, when and it's not beyond a shadow of a doubt that Crow decides to bounce after 1 year. I would say it's probably likely.
Yeah.
But can you imagine like him coming back for year two, and then you've got a freshman like that, and you've got some of these other guys develop, like that could be pretty lethal.
Yeah. It's still like the idea of Scotty Atkinson, T.O. Bear, and Aaron Rowe. That's still not a bad backcourt. No, I wasn't here when you guys talked to Atkinson. I'm on. That kid's 2 inches taller. He's a top 20 kid. Said the same thing about J.J. Andrews. That kid was sitting in the 30s of the composite, and people just kept being like, oh, what are we going to see? And, is there going to be, kind of this consistency of these kinds of shots, and is he going to add this kind of skill set? I want to be like, the guy's been averaging like 1.1 points per possession for 60 games in a row. Like, I know we are all about projectability and we're all about traits, but when a guy is destroying people for 60 games in a row, that matters. Scotty Atkinson's been averaging nearly 19 points a game for 100 games in a row through Webster Groves, through 2 runs on the toughest grassroots circuit out there, through 2 trips to the Nike EYBL 100. He's consistently in the top 10th percentile for offensive efficiency. I don't care if he's 6'2". At some point, scouts are going to go, this guy just produces a shitload every single time he takes the floor. Maybe we should value that. So I think, again, we don't have the benefit of seeing every kid. I understand there's give and take there, but to have a guy who's that productive and just eating souls for 2 years while playing point guard, straight combo, playing off the ball, and still ranking in the top 20th percentile for defense, if you're kind of looking to go, projectable traits and positional size, look at what people have done with Jason Crow. Jason Crow's not going to win a track meet. Jason Crow is 6'2.5". You know what people valued at some point? The ability just to produce. So I think Scotty, if people are doing their job next year, they're going to look and be like, Scotty's jumped 20 spots in the composite. Well, yeah, because people finally go, oh, yeah, after 3 years of just stacking box scores, maybe we should elevate this kid. So
just consistently good.
Just consistently good, and I know we have to balance potential and projectability, but when that production is that steady and that efficient, I just think you gotta reward that, and you gotta recognize that. So that's my spiel on Scotty. Thrilled about that pickup.
But yeah, so that's all I had on the recruiting side that I wanted to talk about. Are
Mhm.
we good there? Did you watch
Yeah,
the all hail YouTube video? See a little practice action. Were you impressed by the the cuts and the graphics of the YouTube personality
I
hitting
can't
Mizzou's
do it,
campus?
man. Just give me straight. I'm very boring. Just like give me the practice cam at mid court,
Yeah,
and no audio. Just like give me the straight raw footage. I don't need the like. Just mount the camera, and I'll take ambient noise. Just let me watch. I don't need the cuts. I don't need the dynamism. I just need a stable camera going like this, and just let
yeah.
me watch. That's why I'm a fuddy duddy, and not hip at all.
Well, if you did watch, you got to see a little bit of practice action, which was nice to see. Mizzou social media has done pretty well as far as getting some, some stuff up there. I am not on the Twitter sphere as much, but I'm getting everything through Instagram. I think they typically post, some of the
Yeah,
longer videos and more photos on Instagram.
yeah.
So lots of good stuff. Make sure you're tuned into that. It's also top eight time, Matt.
It's your favorite time.
It's my favorite off-season project. Honestly, this is the first year that I set up a Google form, and I'm starting to wonder why I didn't do this sooner. It is so much easier just to capture everyone's like takes through a yeah, we're up to 70 responses, which is about twice as many as I normally got because I think it's allowed people from different, whether it's on the Rock'em Plus forums or Twitter or Blue Sky. I will be posting. So this is what is this Tuesday night?
Yeah,
I'll be including this into tomorrow's commute. Just to make sure that people in Rock'em Nation are kind of aware that it's going. We'll stop the count probably maybe Thursday,
yeah,
so I have time to kind of write the everything so far. But it is always one of my favorite exercises, and it happens every year. And I shouldn't let myself get frustrated by it, but I can't help it, Matt. I can't help but be frustrated by people who do not understand the concept of I understand that Dennis Gates is likely to play more than 8 guys in any given game. That is not what this exercise is about. Somebody is going to finish first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, all the way down to 14th in total minutes on the team, right?
yep,
Somebody is going to finish in those spots. So who are going to be the top 8? Now, Missouri was fortunate to not have a whole lot of injury misses last season. Um, and so that is a couple years that was kind of thrown a lot of people for a loop. But one of the things that I do like is that we are going to get to revisit last year's expectations with what actually happened, and then we're going to get to see what everybody thinks is going to happen this upcoming season. Uh, I don't know. Do you want to get into like who you had in your top 8, or you might skew the results? You worried about that at all?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think most people, at least on the initial results you posted on the forum, I think most people have sort of probably come down where I think a lot of people are going to come down. You look at the top, 8. I mean, realistically, top 8 or 9 is usually about the break point in terms of minutes here. If people say he goes to 10 or 11, the gap really there's a wider gap of about like 200 minutes between spot 8 and spot 11. So really, top 8 is probably the best break point. Top 8 or 9, that's where they were last year. Then there was a big drop off. I don't think anybody's gonna be surprised
I
if
think
Mark
you
Mid.
could probably I would say 10 because you could probably combine what Aiden and what Marcus Allen both sort of put out
Yeah,
into one player because they overlapped
that's
in a lot
about
of
where
the
that's probably a good way to think about it. There was
yeah.
their
So
minutes
I
distribution
think
was
10 was probably like the realistic rotation but even
yeah,
those guys like Jacob Cruz would have been. So if you combine those guys, they would have jumped Jacob Cruz. He would have been the 10th guy at
yeah,
426 minutes. And we all saw how much Cruz played. It was a decent amount, but he wasn't like on the floor a lot.
Yeah. So realistically, like 8 or 9 is probably the best cut point. If you want to do 8, that's probably the best way to think about it. And usually in past years, even with injury history, that's been about where you've seen a drop, kind of in the rotation to like deep bench guys. So the best way to think
Yeah.
about it is who's going to be your starters and who are your like core bench unit is probably the best way to think about it. I don't think anybody's gonna be surprised if Mark Mitchell's on the list, Anthony Robinson's on the list, Trent Pierce is on the list, and Jacob Cruz is on the list. I mean, those are all guys that were kind of in that top 8 to 9. They're all back. Honor Batang was kind of buried a little bit because he had Tamar Bates and Caleb Grill there, but don't think anybody would be shocked if Tamar's in that mix. And then you're just sort of, I think, really looking at, who's going to come in. Well, Sebastian Mack is coming in as a big transfer. So there you're at 6. So you're really at Mark, Anthony, Trent, Jacob, Honor, Sebastian. And then if you want, really the last 2 spots, I think, are what you're debating at this point. I think just given kind of the depth needs, if you view Jacob Cruz as a wing more than a 4, you need somebody at the 4 behind Trent. So that's Javon Porter. So now you're at 7. And realistically, then I think the debate that's not really a debate so far, at least if you look at results, is do you think T.O. Barrett's going to make a jump into that mixer because you really only have 2 ball handlers at this point that you've talked about? Or do you think Trent Burns, who's been under wraps for a year, is going to break out and sort of really take hold at that center position? Or are you going to wind up where you're kind of platooning 5s again a little bit more? So I think that's really the break point is going to be, do you think T.O.'s going to get into the mixer as that 3rd ball handler, or do you think Trent Burns is going to emerge as kind of a guy that can give them stability at the 5? So I think that's really the break point where we're kind of looking at things. But I realistically, I went with Burns just because I think I'm looking at it here last year. They kind of platooned in the post last year, and Josh Gray still wound up inside the top 8. So that's where my headspace was. They're going to try. Somebody's going to take the dominant share of minutes at the post. That dominant share of minutes at the post is probably going to be in the top 8. So that's why I went with Gray, and I probably would have. That's why I went with Burns, and I'd probably have T.O. at 9, just because I think they're gonna. If you have an NBA guy who's like showing up on big boards in Ant Robinson, you're going to play him a lot. You brought Mack in to do a hefty load for you, so I think you're just going to wind up maybe with T.O. a little bit lower, just on the outside looking in. But folks are disagreeing with me, which is what this exercise is all about: civil disagreement.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of agreement for the very top sort of half of that. The top 4. I think so that right now there are 70 ballots, and Trent Pierce, Anthony Robinson, and Mark Mitchell are on all 70 of those ballots.
Not shocked.
After that, Sebastian Mack's on 64. Jacob Cruz on 62. So like right there, like you start to see a little bit of a break, and it sort of filters from there. But it is always one of my favorite exercises. Like I said, I'm going to post this Rock'em Nation on the commute tomorrow morning, so the regular Rock'em Nation readers can get a hold of it as well. I like the idea of just continuing to get as many votes on this as we can. Like I said, in the past, I only kind of threw it out on I think Twitter, and I think I did Blue Sky last year as well. But you had to submit.
Type it out.
Yeah, you had to type out your 8 guys, and I think that probably limited a few people who are just kind of lurking and not really interested. This way, they can, click on the form, click the 8 guys, hit submit, and you're done. That's an easy way to do it. So I'm excited for where this is going. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
Watkins is busy going through and doing his team breakdowns with Par. I'm going through and doing swing skill stuff, and hopefully gonna get to write about Jaden Stone this week. We did Sean Phillips a couple weeks ago, and then a 5-star guy came onto the recruiting board, and that kind of scrambled everything a little bit.
A little bit.
Hopefully, I'll be able to get a Jaden Stone swing skill piece done this week, and then. Like I mentioned at the top, I'm going through and just sort of looking over box score and data stuff for recruiting targets here. Probably just I don't think there's going to be much of a shock in terms of what the numbers are going to look like for those guys, and we already know what the priorities are. So we're kind of in that little bit of a doldrum, but we're going to continue to share stuff on the forums and continue to try and do what we normally do in the off season.
The forums are blossoming, man. Like, I really, if you're listening to this and you're not a subscriber, I would encourage you to subscribe. Rock'em Plus, we're building it out. We've also got some new changes coming to Rock'em Nation, which I think people are going to like a lot. Some easier ways to kind of share things. I believe the migration and the update is set for like August 5th, where things might look a little bit different. So early August we'll have a new set for all like the new football content. We're gonna have some new football writers. Like Nate and Nathan still hanging on, but we are churning through some guys who have decided to off to greener pastures, I guess. So we're gonna get out of here and wrap this thing up. Not bad, 46 minutes for a live pod. Next time you see us, it will be season 9. Unbelievable that we are coming up on 9 years of doing this podcast. And I've been doing this thing longer than that. Like I can't even. It's been a while. It's been like 15 years, something like that. So happy anniversaries and all that stuff, which is about to roll over for the Rock'em Nation writing crew.
I haven't broken you yet. I haven't broken you yet. There's still more work to do.
I feel broken sometimes. So we'll be back in a couple weeks to talk anything else that happened. Maybe nothing happened. We'll definitely have the results of the overall top 8. We can talk about rotations. So until then, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you later. Bye.